A small body pitched out of the brush and hit the dirt under the horse's hooves. The horse reared. A boot slammed hard into the stirrup. A man swung down before the animal could stomp. He grabbed the body by the shoulder and rolled it over. A child. No more than 7. Skin pulled tight to the bone. Lips cracked and crusted with dust. The small chest barely moved. The eyes opened a sliver. Black eyes. Patchy eyes. The child did not speak. The child did not cry. The child only stared, and the stare said one thing: water. The man pulled the canteen off his saddle and dropped to his knees in the dirt. His name was Henry Dawes, and he had been riding alone for 6 days. Why was an Apache boy this far from any tribe, dying alone in the dust? Stay with me on this one. Henry was 47 years old. He had ridden out that morning to check on a stray steer, and instead he had found a half-dead boy in the brush. He looked at the empty country one more time. He knew what most men in the territory would do. Most men would leave the child where it lay. A starving Apache child, to those men, was no different from a starving wolf pup. You did not feed it. You did not waste your water on it. You rode on. Henry was not most men. He poured a slow trickle from the canteen onto the boy's lips. The mouth opened. The boy swallowed. Henry gave him 3 more swallows, then closed the canteen. Too much water too fast would kill a starved child as sure as a bullet. Henry knew that. He had buried his own son 2 years back from a fever that took him in 3 nights, and he had learned every wrong way to give water and every right way. He lifted the boy onto the saddle. The body weighed almost nothing. He climbed up behind, one arm around the small chest, and turned the horse for home. His cabin sat 8 miles east, in a draw at the foot of the dry hills. Cottonwoods. A creek that ran half the year. A barn with 2 horses and a mule. A vegetable patch that he tended out of habit more than need. He had built the place with his wife Mary almost 20 years before. She was buried up the hill behind the cabin, beside their son Daniel. There were 2 crosses up there, and a 3rd spot where Henry had always assumed his own would go. He had not had a child in his arms in 2 years. He carried the boy inside, laid him on Daniel's old bed. The boy's eyes opened once, took in the room, and closed again. Henry covered him with a blanket. Then he heated broth on the stove. Beef and salt. Nothing rich. He fed the boy a spoonful at a time. 5 spoonfuls. Then he stopped. He sat by the bed for an hour. He watched the small chest rise and fall. He gave him 5 more spoonfuls. He stopped again. That was the first day. On the second day, the boy woke and tried to sit up. Henry pressed him back down. The boy stared at him. The eyes were sharp now, wary, afraid. Henry held up his hands, showed him they were empty. He pointed to the broth. He pointed to his own mouth. He fed him another spoonful. The boy let him. That afternoon Henry went out and shot a rabbit. He skinned it in the yard. He could feel the boy watching him from the small window. When Henry came back in with the meat, the boy was sitting up against the wall, blanket pulled to his chest. Around his neck on a leather cord hung a small carved bird. Henry had not noticed it before. The boy's hand was closed around it. Henry pointed at the carving and nodded. Did not touch it. The boy's grip eased a little. That night the boy did not sleep alone. Henry had only sat down in the chair beside the bed for a moment. When he opened his eyes, the lamp was burned low and the boy's small hand was wrapped around 2 of his fingers. Henry did not pull away. On the 3rd day, the boy stood up, walked to the table. Saturday. Ate a full bowl of stew, then ate another. His face was still hollow, but the eyes had life in them now. Henry pointed at himself. Henry. The boy stared. Henry pointed again. Henry. The boy made the sound back. Almost. He pointed at his own chest and said something Henry could not pronounce. Henry tried it. The boy almost smiled. That night, Henry sat on the porch with his rifle across his knees and watched the dark country to the south. He did not know where the boy had come from. He did not know if anyone was looking. He knew this. A child does not walk that far alone unless something terrible has happened behind him. And whatever had happened might still be coming. He sat out there until the moon set. On the morning of the fourth day, Henry stepped outside to draw water from the well and froze at the corner of the cabin. 3 Apache women stood at his door. The eldest was a thin, gray-haired woman with a face like cracked leather. The middle one was about Henry's age, and from her eyes Henry knew at once she was the boy's mother. The youngest was perhaps 20, with a long black braid down her back. All 3 carried knives at their hips. None of them had drawn them. Henry did not move. He kept his hands in plain sight, away from the rifle by the door. He had set the rifle there before he stepped out, by old habit, and he was glad of it now. The eldest woman looked at him a long time. Then she spoke. Slow English. Heavy. "You have a boy." "Yes," Henry said. "He lives." "He lives." She nodded once. The boy's mother took a half-step forward and stopped herself. She was breathing hard, but her face was still as stone. Henry stepped aside from the door. "Come in." They did not move. The eldest watched him. "Come in," Henry said again. "He's eating breakfast. Come see." The eldest woman said something low to the others in their own tongue. The mother went past Henry first. She did not look at him. She walked into the cabin and stopped just past the threshold. The boy was at the table with a tin cup in his hand. He looked up. Then he was off the chair and across the floor and in his mother's arms before Henry had turned around. The mother made no sound. She held him so tight her knuckles went white on the back of his small shirt. The boy's face was buried in her shoulder. Henry stepped back outside and closed the door behind him so they could have the moment. The eldest and the youngest were still in the yard. The eldest was watching him with eyes that gave nothing away. "How many days?" she asked. 4, Henry said. "How sick?" "Bad." He could not stand the first day. He could not speak the second. The old woman closed her eyes for a moment. Just a moment, then opened them again. "His father is dead," she said. Henry did not know what to say to that, so he said nothing. 2 weeks ago. Riders. They came in the night. They killed the men. They took the horses. The boy ran. We thought he was dead. We have been walking for him every day since." Henry felt the cold settle in his stomach. "How many riders?" he asked. 6. White men. One in a long coat with a scar from his eye to his jaw. "Have they kept after you?" "They are not finished," the old woman said. "They want to finish." Henry looked past her at the empty land to the south. "Come inside," he said. "All of you. Eat. Then we will talk about what comes next." They came in. He fed them. Cornbread, beans, the last of the rabbit. The boy sat in his mother's lap the whole time. He would not let go of her sleeve. The mother ate with one hand. She kept the other on the boy's head. The youngest woman did not speak the whole meal. She watched Henry the way a bird watches a snake. After they had eaten, the mother lifted the leather cord from around the boy's neck. The little carved bird. She held it up to Henry. Then she pointed at his chest. Then she put it back around the boy's neck. She did not have the English for what she meant. She did not need to. Henry nodded. The eldest spoke again. "We must go. You can stay tonight." "No. We have come too close to your house already. If the riders find us here, they will find you too. We will go now and ride east. We have family 3 days east. We will be safe there. You have horses?" 2. Hidden in the draw. "You have food?" "Some. Enough for 3 days." Henry got up and went to his pantry. He filled a sack with cornmeal, jerky, a tin of salt, dried apples. He brought it to the door. The eldest looked at the sack a long time. "Why?" she said. Henry shrugged. He did not have an answer. Or rather, he had one, but he did not know how to say it in any tongue. He put the sack in her arms. She took it. The mother stood. She held the boy's hand. The boy looked up at Henry. His face crumpled for just one moment and then went still again, the way a child's face does when he is trying to be brave. Henry knelt down to the boy's height. He pointed at the carved bird around his neck. Then he pointed at his own heart. Then he tapped the boy's chest gently once. The boy nodded, solemn, like a small man. Then they were going. Out the door, across the yard, down the dry path toward the draw. The eldest went first. The youngest followed. The mother walked slow with the boy beside her. He turned once before they passed the cottonwoods. He looked back. Henry raised one hand. The boy raised his. And then they were gone. Henry stood in the yard a long time after they had disappeared. The sun was high. The hawks were turning over the dry hills. A grasshopper buzzed in the brush. Everything was quiet. Everything was as it had been before that small body had pitched out of the brush 4 days ago. He walked back inside the cabin. The bed was empty. The chair was empty. The tin cup the boy had been holding sat on the table half full of milk. Henry sat down at the table. He looked at the cup for a while. Then he stood up, took it to the wash basin and washed it. He set it back on the shelf. He wiped down the table. He swept the floor. He fed the chickens. He carried in firewood for the night. He did all the small things a man does at the end of a day to make a house quiet again. He lit the lamp. He sat down with his Bible. He turned to a page he liked. He started to read. The cabin was very still. For the first time in 4 days it was empty. A scream tore through the dusk. Henry was on his feet before the sound had finished. The Bible hit the floor. He grabbed the rifle from beside the door and he was outside in 3 strides. The scream came again. From the south. A woman's voice. Then a gunshot. Henry was already running for the barn. He got the saddle on the gray gelding in less than 2 minutes. He mounted with the rifle across his lap and he kicked the horse hard down the path the women had taken. The light was almost gone. The sky was the color of a bruise. He could hear horses now, more than one, hoofs pounding on dry ground. And he could hear shouting. White men's voices. Cruel voices. He came around the bend in the draw and he saw it. The eldest woman lay face down in the dust. Not moving. The youngest was on her knees beside her. There was blood on her side, soaking through the deerskin. The mother and the boy were nowhere in sight. 3 riders had circled the women. One was already off his horse, walking toward the youngest, drawing his knife. He was laughing. Henry did not call out. He did not warn them. He raised the rifle as the gelding ran and he fired from the saddle. The man on foot dropped where he stood. The 2 on horseback wheeled around and Henry fired again. He missed. The 3rd rider raised a pistol. Henry fired a 3rd time. He hit the rider's horse. The horse went down screaming, and the rider rolled clear. The other one fired wild and Henry felt the wind of the bullet past his ear. He rode straight at them. He fired the rifle until it was empty. One rider broke and ran. The other was still on the ground, scrambling for his pistol. Henry was off the gelding before the horse had stopped. He kicked the pistol away. He stood over the man with the empty rifle. "Get up." The man got up. He had a thin face and bad teeth and his eyes were yellow with fear. "Where's the woman?" Henry said. "The young one with the boy." "Don't know." "Where?" "I don't know, mister. I swear I don't." "How many of you?" "6. "How many left?" The man counted. 3. "With Pike. Pike's the one with the scar. He took off with 2 others when he heard your shot. They went east. After the woman. After the woman." Henry hit him across the face with the rifle stock. The man went down. Henry tied his hands behind his back with a length of his own belt. Then he went to the eldest woman. She was dead. He had known it before he reached her. There was a hole through her chest that no one walks away from. He went to the youngest. She was still breathing. The wound was in her side, low. Bleeding bad, but not the kind that kills in minutes. Can you ride? He asked her. She looked up at him. He did not know if she had any English. He pointed at his horse, then at her, then made the riding motion with his hands. She nodded. He got her on the gelding. He tied the prisoner's horse behind. He covered the eldest woman's face with her own shawl. He marked the spot in his memory. He would come back for her in the morning, if there was a morning. Then he turned the horse for home. If you have stayed with me this long, do me one small favor. Hit that subscribe button. There is more of this story coming, and more like it after, and that little tap of your finger keeps the next one coming. Now back to Henry. He rode hard. The young woman slumped against his back. The prisoner stumbled along behind on a lead rope. Twice the man fell and Henry did not stop. He dragged him until he got back up. Pike and two others. He's heading after the mother and the boy. Henry's mind was running cold and clear now. He knew this country. East from his cabin was the dry creek, then the broken canyon. The mother could not have made the canyon yet. She would still be in the cottonwoods. With the boy, hiding. If she was lucky, hiding well. He came up to the cabin in the last light. He helped the young woman down from the saddle. She could walk if he held her. He brought her inside. He laid her on Daniel's old bed. Stay, he said. He pointed to the bed. He pointed to her. Stay. I come back. She nodded. He dragged the prisoner into the root cellar and locked him in. He reloaded the rifle. He took the dead rider's 2 pistols, both still loaded, and stuck them in his belt. He went back outside, mounted the gelding, and turned east. The moon was rising, half full, enough to ride by. He had been a soldier once, long ago, before he was a husband, before he was a father, before he was a man who buried both of them. He had not asked for any of that to come back to him. But it was coming back now whether he asked or not. 3 men, Pike with the scar, a mother and a child somewhere in the dark cottonwoods, holding their breath. Henry pushed the horse to a gallop. Henry knew the cottonwoods better than any man alive. He had been hunting in those trees for 20 years. He knew where the deer bedded down. He knew where the soft ground was. He knew where a small woman with a small boy might tuck herself into a hollow under a fallen tree and not be found by anyone who did not know that hollow was there. He left the gelding tied in the dry creek bed. He went the rest of the way on foot, quiet, low. The moon was up over the trees now. He could see the cottonwoods as a black band against the silver hills. He stopped at the edge of the trees and listened. Voices. 3 voices. Low. Check the other side, Marsh. She came through here. She had to. Why we even out here, Pike? It's a squaw and a kid. Because that's $100, that's why. I told you. The army pays $100 a head for an Apache, dead or alive. They don't ask what age. Henry felt his hand tighten on the rifle. He moved through the trees. He knew which fallen logs were soft and would break under a boot. He stayed off them. He came up behind the voices like a ghost. He saw them then. 3 men on foot. Lanterns dark. They were spread out in a search line, working their way through the trees. The middle one was tall, with a long coat. Even in the moonlight Henry could see the line of the scar running from his eye down to his jaw. Pike. Henry stopped behind a tree. He needed to know where the mother was first. If he started shooting now, Pike's men would shoot wild. The mother and boy were somewhere in these trees. He could not afford a stray bullet in the dark. He listened, and then he heard it, just barely. A sound like a child's breath held too long. From his left. Henry moved that way. Slow, slow. He found her in the hollow under the big fallen cottonwood, exactly where he had thought she might be. The mother was pressed flat against the dirt, one hand over the boy's mouth, the other gripping a knife. Her eyes met his in the dark, and for 1 second she did not know him. She brought the knife up. Henry put 1 finger to his lips. She knew him. The knife went down. He pointed at her, then at the ground. Stay. He pointed at the boy. Same. Stay. She nodded. He moved away from the hollow. 20 feet. 40. He wanted them gone from where the children were. He picked his spot. A rise of ground with a thick trunk to put his back against. He cocked the rifle. He took a breath. Pike, he called. The three voices went silent at once. Pike, Henry called again. I am the man whose horse you heard back at the draw. I shot 3 of your men an hour ago. 2 are dead and 1 is in my cellar. I have come for you. Drop your guns and walk to my voice and you will live to be tried in town. Stay where you are and you die in these trees. A long silence. Then Pike's voice. Calm. Almost amused. Stranger, you sound like a man who has had a long night. Why don't you go on home? This is my home. That's so. That is so. The woman and the boy are under my protection. The old one is dead because of you. Walk in, Pike. Walk in now. Boys, Pike said. The 3 of them opened up at once. They did not know exactly where Henry was, but they had a general idea, and they sprayed it. Bark exploded off the tree behind him. A bullet slapped the dirt by his boot. Henry waited for the muzzle flashes to fade, and then he fired at the man on the right. The man fell. 2 left. Pike and the other one. They went silent. They were moving now. Henry moved too. He slid down behind a different tree. He listened. He could hear one set of boots crunching to his left, getting closer, trying to flank him. He let the man come. Closer. Closer. When the man stepped past the tree, Henry rose up and shot him at 5 feet. The man dropped without a sound. That left Pike. The trees went very quiet. Stranger, Pike called. I will give you one chance. Walk away. The army pays for them. You walk away. I won't even tell anybody you was here. Henry did not answer. He moved through the trees. Slow. He had not been a soldier for 30 years. But the body remembered. The breath in the belly. The weight on the balls of the feet. The eyes scanning low, where the moonlight made the shadows. He saw the long coat first. Pike was crouched behind a stump, pistol up, watching the wrong direction. Henry stepped out from behind a tree and put the rifle on him. Pike! Pike turned. Pike was fast. Henry had to give him that. The pistol came around and fired, and Henry felt something hot tear across the meat of his left arm. But Henry's rifle was already aimed. He fired once. The shot took Pike high in the chest. Pike went back against the stump and slid down. Henry walked over. He stood over him. Pike was still alive. Just, you should have left them alone, Henry said. Pike's mouth moved. Nothing came out. Henry waited until the eyes were empty. Then he turned and walked back through the trees, calling out softly, until the mother came up out of the hollow with the boy in her arms. The boy reached for him. Henry took him. They walked out of the cottonwoods together. 3 of them. The mother had blood on her hands, but it was not her own. The boy had his head on Henry's shoulder. Henry's left arm was bleeding into his shirt. None of them spoke. The moon was high. It was a long walk home. The first thing the mother did when they got back to the cabin was tend to the wound on Henry's arm. She did not ask. She sat him down at the table. She took his shirt off him. She looked at the gash. She found a clean cloth, hot water, and a bottle of whiskey from the shelf, and she went to work. The boy stood at his elbow the whole time and would not be moved. The bullet had cut a furrow in the meat above his elbow, deep but clean. The mother poured whiskey into it. Henry hissed through his teeth. The boy reached up and put a small hand on Henry's other wrist. Held it. She wrapped the wound tight. She tied off the bandage. She nodded once. Done. Henry sat with his shirt off and his arm bandaged and the boy still holding his wrist, and he looked at her for a long time. Thank you, he said. The mother nodded. She was crying without making any sound. Henry had not seen that in many years. His own wife had cried that way at the end. He looked away from her face, out of respect. The young one in the back room was sleeping. Henry had checked her wound when they walked in. The mother had gone to her sister at once and stayed by her for an hour. The bleeding had slowed. She would live if no fever came. That night no one slept much. The boy lay between his mother and Henry by the fire. Twice in the night the boy reached for Henry in his sleep, made sure he was still there, and then went back to dreaming. The mother saw it both times. She did not say anything. In the morning Henry rode out alone. He went back to the draw. He found the eldest woman where he had left her. He wrapped her in 2 of his own blankets. He laid her in the bed of the wagon, gentle as if she were sleeping, and he brought her home. The mother and the young one washed her body and dressed her in clean things. Henry dug a grave at the edge of his land, under a single old cottonwood. He dug it deep. They put her in the ground in the late afternoon. The mother sang something low and did not stop singing while Henry filled the grave. The young one sat on the ground beside it. The boy stood at Henry's elbow the whole time. When it was done, the mother put a small carved figure on the mound of earth. A bird, like the one her son wore. She left it there. That night they ate together at the table. There was no talking. The boy fell asleep in his chair. Henry carried him to the bed. The next morning the mother spoke. Her English was not much, but it was enough. "My son, you feed him. Keep him alive. We had 3. You, the riders, the land. You are the only one who give back." Henry said, "He is a good boy. His name is Niall, the wind, because he is small and he is fast." "Niall." She nodded once. Then she said, "We have no place. The riders found us. Family gone east, some dead, some too far. Old mother dead. We have nothing." "You have a place," Henry said. "Here, as long as you want it." She did not answer that with words. She put her hand flat on the table. He put his hand next to hers. Not touching, just there. The days after that were quiet days. The young one's wound healed slow, but it healed. The mother took over the cooking and the garden. The boy followed Henry everywhere. To the barn, to the well, to the fence line. He learned the English for horse and rope, and water and supper. He taught Henry the words back in his own tongue. Henry was a slow learner. The boy laughed at him for it. It was the first time Henry had heard the boy laugh. In the second week, Henry rode into town. He brought the prisoner from the root cellar tied across a packhorse. He delivered him to the sheriff. He told what had happened in the draw and in the cottonwoods. The sheriff was quiet for a long time. He had heard of Pike. Pike had been wanted out of 3 counties for what he did with the bounty money and the killings he made to get it. The sheriff said there would be no charges. When Henry turned to leave, the sheriff said, "You're keeping the women out at your place?" "They lost their people," Henry said. "They've got nowhere to go." The sheriff looked at him a long time. Then he said, "Some folks won't like it. Some folks don't have to like it." The sheriff nodded. "Good day, Henry." "Good day." Henry rode home. He came up the path in the late afternoon, and Niall saw him first and ran out to meet the horse. Henry stopped the gelding and reached down and pulled the boy up into the saddle in front of him. They rode the last quarter-mile up to the cabin together, the boy's small hands in the gelding's mane, Henry's good arm around his small chest. The mother came out onto the porch. She had flour on her hands. She watched them ride in, and she did not smile exactly, but her face changed. Henry came up to the porch. The boy slid down into his mother's reach. Henry sat in the saddle for a minute without dismounting. He looked at the cabin, the smoke from the chimney, the light in the kitchen window, the 2 graves on the hill behind, and now a third under the cottonwood at the edge of the land. The horses in the corral, the garden, his own people 2 years buried, and another woman's people just buried this week. And in front of him, a woman with flour on her hands and a small boy reaching up for her sleeve. He had ridden out 4 days ago to find a stray steer. He had found, instead, the rest of his life. He swung down off the gelding, put his good arm around the boy's shoulders, and went inside to wash up for supper.